Hello guys, it's JohnnyTime and welcome to another amazing Web3 Security interview. Today we have a very special guest that you're gonna enjoy from very much and a great expert in the Web3 security field. So he's a team lead at Unit 0x at Coinbase. He used to work with traditional finance and with the Federal Reserve. He is traditional cybersecurity professional, malware analysis, incident response, SOC that shifted to Web3 security full-time, and is also the brilliant mind behind Blockthreat newsletter. Yes, you guessed it right. Today we're gonna have Peter on the show and we're gonna share so many amazing insights and resources and tips and cool stories. So grab your favorite drink and get a comfortable position, whether you're in your couch, on your laptop. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and without further ado, let's get started with the interview with Peter. Hello, Peter. How are you? Nice to have you here on the show.
Hi, Johnny. It's an honor. Thanks for the invitation.
My pleasure. So before we deep dive into those juicy, interesting stories that you came here to tell, because we know you have many of them, let's do some kind of introduction so the audience can get to know how legendary you are, get to know you better, your background, because you have pretty impressive background. So can you tell a bit about your background and how you got into blockchain and Web3?
Sure. Well, it was definitely an accident. I was very much into traditional security. As you mentioned, I started my career at the Federal Reserve, so it's as centralized as it gets. This is the central bank of the United States. And then eventually moved towards things like malware reverse engineering, exploit development, and other things, all in a traditional space. The Web3, it wasn't even called Web3 back then. That was around 2017, I got really excited about, it was just blockchains, level L1 blockchains for the most part. Ethereum was a couple of years old. It was just taking off. I got really interested, and I liked the idea of spending your time and spending your resources towards an interesting cause. So being able to invest your time into an expertise to create a new financial system that is open to everyone, that millions of people can benefit from, that just kind of creates a really nice drive for me. I got really excited. People around me thought, like, this is crazy. I think it was it was one of the bear markets at the time. But it's been a most joyous journey of my career.
That's very interesting to hear. So you started actually in traditional finance, right? You worked for the Federal Reserve or some banks. Can you tell us a bit about that? Like how from working for the Federal Reserve, you shifted through the open financial system, the open economy, and working with blockchains?
Sure. I mean, Federal Reserve is an institution. It's very by the book, as it should be. And it was interesting because I was the guy, like I was a kid right out of school who joined there. I was wearing these like 2600 t-shirts and drinking energy drinks. And you have like folks that work there, like 30, 40-year career careers. So it's kind of fun.
All the dinosaurs.
Well,
in Israel we call them dinosaurs.
Yeah. Sure, they're good guys. They chose to invest their time and careers into something they believe in. And that's the kind of environment that I was kind of onboarded on. There's just like, this is something that you start working out of college and you can retire there. So it was a lot of fun just seeing like how do large machines like that work? How do our financial institutions work? The criticality of it was insane. It's just, wow, like you're working on this project and you found an O-Day in something, you just protected millions of dollars to taxpayers. So the impact there was understanding the importance of everything that you do costs people money, costs taxpayer money, and you really affect livelihoods of people. That said, of course, there's only that far you can get in a large organization like that. For me personally, just in terms of, I was always excited about new things and pushing the boundaries. So eventually I took like a year-long sabbatical and went all in on exploitation and reversing. So that begins my other chapter. But
That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go on.
but beyond, yeah, the transition to actual Web3 was is that doing malware analysis nonstop. Uh, I noticed that the last year, like I've been doing it for almost 4 years at Mandiant, I spent all my time reversing ransomware samples. And that was my introduction. Like, why? Like, what is this? It's all cryptocurrency. It's all Bitcoin. I have no idea how to track that. And like, I'm always curious to do the investigations and to actually understand like where the attackers are coming, not just understanding how the malware works. And that was my first introduction to Web3. And Coinbase happened. That was a happy accident. I was originally hired not even to do anything Web3 related. They didn't have any like blockchain function at the time. So that's something that I later on helped create at Coinbase, so that they have a like more of a dedicated function for blockchain security.
That's very interesting. So from doing IR and just reversing and malware analysis of like ransomwares that steal money and get a ransom in Bitcoin or whatever other cryptocurrencies, you just got interested into blockchain and explored it more in depth, which is very interesting. I have plenty of friends that are doing IR in different companies, and obviously they also investigate ransomwares, but none of them really got the the drive to go and research further. But you really got interested into it, and maybe some of them will do that as well, because I'm sure it's very interesting. I mean, I would be interested.
There's a stigma, I think. I think there's a certain perception which existed 5 years ago when I was starting out, when people were saying like, what are you, crazy? What are you joining? And I think there's the same stigma within traditional security towards cryptocurrency security. But these people are missing out. They have no idea just how much fun we're having, how interesting and just fascinating this field is, with how much innovation is happening. So hope we can, through these chats and dialogue, we can change that.
For sure. I'm having so much pleasure doing Web3 security full time, and I can tell that it's much more interesting for me than traditional cybersecurity that I used to do. I used to have this passion and excitement in the beginning when I just started with penetration testing and learning how to hack websites and create malwares and such, and how to bypass different systems in the Windows machine, or like when I learned about how operating system works and stuff. But at some point I got a bit bored from traditional cybersecurity, and when I discovered the Web3 security world, it's like a kid that is getting to a completely new playground, and it's very exciting. And I'm sure that a lot of them will discover it sooner or later as well.
That's it, exactly. I felt honestly like everything that I was doing, I know there are people who've done this for a decade before me. So when I was doing pen testing at the Fed, I would find the usual XSS and SQL injection and all that stuff. But how innovative was this? How many times was this done before? Now, everything that we do in Web3, you're probably the first person who attempted those things. There are new vulnerability classes that get explored all the time. There are new solutions for the way that we do the reverse engineering, the way we do the exploit analysis, monitoring. We'll talk about all of this. Chances are, whenever you explore something in this field, you will be the first person to do it, and you can have a real impact on the field, which is awesome.
For sure, for sure. So if someone is adventurous and want to explore and be like, a pioneer in something, Web3 is definitely the place for them.
Security people are adventurous by definition. To have the security mindset where you're constantly prodding at something, I feel that if we can break that stigma, more people will join this field than we could hope. So this is what I'm looking forward to.
100%. Now, so from penetration testing and the Fed, then malware analysis and Mandiant with Flare, you worked out with Flare on the tool, using the tool, then to Unit 0x at Coinbase. So can you please tell us like how this shift happened directly from Mandiant, from doing malware analysis to Coinbase, like how it started, how he got this opportunity to build a team there, to create a team there, or maybe you started as just another team member. So how did the story unfolds?
Well, it was gradual. Again, back then there was no specific function at any company that just does blockchain security. So when I started at Coinbase, it was more of a team lead for traditional incident response. So everything that you imagine, anything from compromised servers to endpoint security, all of that good stuff. But it's almost like being a janitor at a space station. Like you don't want to do, clean the walls and the windows when you see there's just like rockets flying every day. So naturally, like, hey, like I made a proposal to start a new team. It still exists, blockchain security, and that's a dedicated team that does blockchain security all day. Like this is all they do. So anything from smart contract security to understanding how to properly analyze, confirmation count for blockchains, how to look at key security, and so on and so on. So that was the big shift, and I'm so glad that I had good leadership that also recognized that need and gave a green light to that. And the latest change is in Unit 0x, where the team is focused on zero-day threats. So if it sounds like Google's Project Zero, because that's kind of what we modeled it after, and we realized that once we established the standard operational procedure for blockchain security, it is now time to push even further to start predicting what the threats are going to be before they evolve. And you can see some of our work through blog posts, like we wrote about zero transfer. We regulate zero transfer phishing. We helped really rally the industry to put protections in blockchain explorers, in wallet software. On the user security side, on the DeFi security side, we regularly publish detailed postmortems, not just into how the attack happened, but everything around who the attackers are, how do they operate, where's the money flowing to. So really push the industry to where we want to see it, with in-depth analysis and professionalism of what we see in traditional security, like bring it on to blockchain side as well. That's what Unit 0x is. We try to push the envelope.
This is super cool. So correct me if I'm wrong, but Coinbase has like the traditional cybersecurity team that are probably doing SOC, incident response, infrastructure, cloud servers, web application, etc. Right?
Correct.
Then there is the blockchain security team that is more like dedicated and it's people that are more skilled with smart contracts, with confirming blocks, private keys, and such. And then there is the Unit 0x team that is kind of like team that is not directly working on Coinbase products and Coinbase security, but contributing to the security in the space in general, right? Because it's more like to spot 0 days, to new bug classes, educate the community, find new threats, or probably under other things happens under this umbrella of Unit 0x. But correct me if the overview is like correct.
Our mission is to increase trust in the ecosystem. That's why we exist. And the way that we chose to accomplish this mission is through public education, through pushing the research and pushing capabilities forward in the industry.
That's very interesting.
We're also troublemakers. So sometimes when we message people get concerned because we probably found something. But we have obviously, we're all on the same side. We're all trying to save people from losing their assets, make sure that they trust the ecosystem. But sometimes we get in trouble.
Which is actually, for me, it's super interesting that Coinbase is actually dedicating funds and resources to make sure that the whole blockchain space is more secure, more trustworthy, because they understand that if they see it as a problem, and they see that if they contribute to this kind of matter, it will help, obviously, it will help people feel more confident with crypto, which will lead to more people onboarding to crypto and eventually using Coinbase products, which is very interesting as a company decision to invest in such team.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, end of the day, like the reason why Coinbase exists is to increase the use of cryptocurrency, to open up financial system for the people. And trust is a critical component to that. If people don't trust it, they have fear, like, oh, I'm going to go online and I'm going to lose everything that I bought. I'm going to get scammed or phished, or the project I invested in, I'm going to lose everything. People are not going to explore this, and they're going to, frankly, miss out on a huge benefit, a liberating benefit to all of them. So it only makes sense to spend time and resources to help fix that.
That makes sense. Yeah. So,
The
but how?
journey will never end. This is for as long as the industry will exist, we'll have to fight this, and we will not ever solve this completely. But inch by inch, we'll slowly advance it forward, just like in traditional security.
I agree 100%. Now, it's a bit unique team, and not like the team that you're used to seeing in companies. And other teams, it's easy to measure their success, right? Because if it's like cybersecurity SOC team, you can see how many incidents they were able to detect or how the monitoring was improved, etc. How do you measure the success of 0x team? How do you know that you actually success the mission and deliver?
I mean, the ideal success criteria is that everyone onboards and we change the perception in trust. But the reality is we do have goals for how many vulnerabilities we fix, how many, outreaches we make. So anything related to increasing trust, we measure, and we see like, okay, what is it that we need to refocus on? So for the last, I would say, past couple of quarters, we've really pushed on user trust security because there's increase in phishing attacks, the novel techniques that keep coming up all the time. So we're working on a project right now to like really push the industry forward on that through education and through additional tools and resources, just to help identify how phishers and scammers operate. But then sometimes we refocus and look at DeFi projects and see who the bad actors are. For example, we collect threat intelligence on what are their tactics, techniques, see if we can forewarn projects what they need to do to prepare for that.
This is very interesting. We'll talk a bit later about threat intelligence and classifying DeFi attacker teams, because this is super interesting. But also phishing and scams are also a very important part, because I imagine that even if there is like experienced crypto user, which is something that we see a lot with some bored API clubs or like very super expensive NFTs, and suddenly he gets scammed and all his NFT going to be stolen, especially when he has a voice and he has like a lot of followers on Twitter and such. He's going to tell anyone crypto is bad, even though that he wasn't crypto, he enjoyed crypto, he was in a while, he might be so traumatized by the fact that millions of dollars got stolen in front of NFT. He will be a bad ambassador to the industry, right? He will tell his friend, don't do crypto, I just lost all my money. He will tell on Twitter, I'm leaving crypto, that's it, I'm done. It happens a lot. I saw these kind of tweets, like people are losing millions of dollars or hundred thousands of dollars. So I guess that your work of like even preventing those phishing attacks is very beneficial to the way Web3 and blockchain looks in other people and to the mass adoption. So it's super cool.
Yeah, we don't want another Mark Cuban. We don't want another. There's been so many.
Exactly.
I mean, especially when there's a lot of noise about, I guess, celebrity hacks, right? Like, hey, like Mark Cuban got compromised. I'm more worried about someone who put their assets that was supposed to be like their, college fund for their kids, and they lost that. Like, I'm heartbroken every time I see like hundreds of thousands of dollars just like flying by. Like, I imagine it's like, okay, someone's kid is like now has to make, some father out there needs to make tough choices over what they're going to do for their family. And that sucks. That's, I mean, I try to channel it as a motivator, but that just sucks. Like when I see people losing money like that.
It's horrible. And when we see those hacks, we usually see numbers, right? We see 10 millions, 2 millions, 100 millions. But we tend to forget, and we don't realize that behind those $100 million, there might be families, there might be students with loans, there might be just people who need the money. There are so many stories about every single hack and people that are getting hurt, and it just takes our industry back. But it's incredible to see that even all those catastrophes, the industry is moving forward. We have new developments in the space. People are building more solutions, more products, both innovation in Web3 and both regarding security. We are getting better. And this is exciting to be part of these like WhiteHat teams or like warriors that are helping to secure this new innovational financial platform system, whatever you call it.
Yep.
So
we have a good mission.
Yeah, very good mission, and it's exciting. And how many people currently are under your team, Unit 0x?
We are tiny. There are just two of us.
Two, two,
Uh,
two
yes,
very creme de la creme.
well, we're specialized in our unique fields. You probably invite you to look at the research of my colleague Heidi Wilder, and she posted a lot of work also at the recent DeFi Security Summit on incident response and helping. She wrote a lot of blogs as well. So we hope to expand in the future, obviously, but we're highly specialized on investigations and this kind of deep analysis. So that's what we do.
So you're mainly not focused on like managing people, but you're actually doing the research yourself.
Like as a manager, I guess my weak point as a manager, I'm not really the kind of person that will set, I guess, metrics and goals and OKRs. But between us two, we're really good at identifying what needs to be solved, not on a scale of next week or next quarter, but overall, over years of the industry. Like, what are the big ones? How can we eliminate whole classes of issues? And then that's our goal. That's our kind of OKR, if you're using the language. And that's what we are working on every day on.
That's very interesting. So just to get a bit of perspective, how many people are working on blockchain security in Coinbase? And out of them, there is like Unit 0x, which are the two of you. So how many people in general in the department?
Thing is, everyone works on blockchain security. We're a cryptocurrency company. So we, in one way or another, blockchain security is our expertise. So it's not really something that you do as okay, now I'm going to do some blockchain security. It goes through everything that we do.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
So if you're incident responder, you respond to blockchain incidents. If you are application security person, you review smart contracts, or at another time you will review some key management protocol and so on.
That makes sense. And currently Coinbase is hiring to this blockchain security department, or I know the sentiment in the market is a bit tough right now. Yeah.
I have to double check. There are new jobs get posted every once in a while.
Cool. So if you guys listening to this and you want to check out, go head over to Coinbase Careers. And for the guys that are going to the careers and looking for open position, let's give them some tips. What kind of qualities are you looking for, or skills, or doesn't matter. It could be personal skills or technical skills you're looking for when you're hiring people to your team or you're building a new team, so they can see and learn how to get better and increase their chances of like landing a job.
Well, I guess there are two sides of this. Folks that I'm looking for versus folks that are also needed throughout the Web3 industry. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing, when you work in traditional security, DeFi security, you can't go to school to learn DeFi security. Classes like yours, they only popped up in the last few months. Like, this is as good as it gets. You can take Johnny's class. It's awesome. But that only appeared a month ago. And that's frankly still not enough. The best you can do is you can take existing classes, existing courses, and just really continue on that journey and learn. So what I'm really looking for is curiosity.
Exactly. I wanted to interrupt you and say, be curious. Just go and research and be curious.
It's a never-ending journey. My God, I've been doing this for 5 years, and I have a forcing function, which we can talk about later, to review news and developments every single week. And every single week, it still blows my mind just how much new stuff shows up. So that's what I'm looking for, is folks who are curious, who are driven, who understand why we do this. And specific technical capabilities, they can be learned. There's nothing that we're doing which cannot be, anything that is created by a human being can be learned by another human being. There are no unicorns or, special people that can only know this. everyone can learn this field, but you just have to want to do this. You have to be passionate about it. And it's
Definitely.
so
This is
easy to
one
get
of
excited
the
about what we do.
Yeah, it's one of the most important values to be curious. And I remember even it's also works for traditional cybersecurity or for everything that you do in life. If you do it without curiosity and you don't have motivation to learn and to consume new content and you're not excited about what you do, you will do a shitty job and you will not move forward and you won't bring value to the organization or industry that you're a part of. And it's even more important with blockchain security because the pace is insane. Every day there are new acts, new backclasses. You cannot keep up with Twitter. Like now there is like the ZK Sync 1.1 million contracts and everyone is like heading to zero knowledge. The next one there might be another technology and everyone will go and learn that. So it's really overwhelming and you really need to be curious. It's good that there are classes like my course and it's a very great way to get started, but the learning doesn't end there. You need to really go out there and also not only read or watch videos, but actually learn by doing. This is something that I truly believe in. So read code, read reports, do contests, do auditing, go through blockchain transactions and analyze them on-chain using Tenderly or using just blockchain explorers just to get better.
Well, that's definitely that. Another part I wanted to mention, Johnny, is that there are also a whole variety of jobs that are not filled or even imagined just yet. There's a lot of focus on auditors. There's a lot of focus on, I guess, maybe even security engineers within Web3 space. But what's missing, where are the professional incident responders, Web3 incident responders who know how to conduct investigations, who know how to reverse engineer exploits and understand who the attackers are? Threat intelligence analysts, threat modelers, basically look through any normal, job listing for a large enough security company. Where are all those roles? And they don't exist just yet. So it's something to look forward to. And don't feel that, oh, you want to join the Web3 space, you absolutely must join as an auditor. Do what you know best. And then suddenly you can adopt your knowledge base to just Web3 field.
Exactly. And this is something that we discussed before. And it's what makes me even more excited because we are really pioneers because we, both of us, coming from traditional cybersecurity, and we know that there are so many different paths which you can take. You could be a penetration tester, you could be a malware analyst, SOC professional, integration professional, you can do IR, all kinds of things like 0 days researcher, find like 0 days memory research, whatever. So many niches within traditional cybersecurity. In Web3 security, the focus is audits. Web3 security engineer, which if you compare it to traditional cybersecurity, it's like penetration testing, right?
Yep.
Not like bug bounty is more like penetration testing, like kind of like gray box on like mainnet. Yeah, bug hunters. It's like more like when you go to a company and you do like complete penetration testing and pretend to be an attacker. And auditing, auditing content is like penetration testing, where like white box penetration testing. But where is IR? Where is this threat intel? All the things that you mentioned, it's things that do not exist there, and obviously we don't have education around it. Yeah, so it's super exciting, and I believe that the demand for these roles will come more in the future. And when the demand comes, obviously I will be here to create content and courses and trainings around it, because for me, I look like you, like long-term vision, blockchain security academy, not only smart contract audits or security reviews or hacking. This is like just the penetration testing if you compare it to cybersecurity. And this is cool place to be.
Yeah, we are still, we always say like we're still very early in cryptocurrencies. We're still very early in terms of blockchain security. We're just at the start of it. And you look at history, right? Like look at year, I guess 1990s. The first security companies that showed up, like period, information
Checkpoint.
Security companies. What's that?
Checkpoint?
Even before Checkpoint, there were small, tiny consulting companies. Like go back in history to, Legions of Doom. The Legions of Doom, you had these these hackers who were doing this for fun, the first thing they did, they started one of the first early consulting companies that did security audits, pen testing. So, and then later that was before there were firewalls or intrusion detection systems, like all that was missing, gone. And they started out with audits. And then slowly the industry progressed and we started adding like all these new roles that are all dedicated to various other aspects of security.
So we are like in the 1990s of hacking and traditional cybersecurity, right? Maybe we can learn from this and get better.
We really should. Again, like I feel like this divide that I mentioned from traditional security towards maybe Web3 security, it kind of exists the other way around too, because sometimes we are reinventing the wheel where we should just look at history and what was already thought through. Like the whole debate about bug bounties, right? Like, are bug bounties worth it? How much we should pay? Like all of that debate has been existing in TradSec for decades. Everyone came to a conclusion, like people were upset of how much they need to pay in bounties. And, in the end, all the companies started increasing what bounties are because they understood the mathematics of it. And it's funny how we're retracing the same steps and having similar debates.
Yeah, the debates around bug bounties and the fact that projects don't want to pay or downgrade your finding is on fire now on Twitter. Everyone is talking about it. And then you immunify vaults. And we can learn a lot from traditional cybersecurity because it exists for a while. Now, we talked about resources, and one of the amazing resources that you created and still maintaining is the Blockthreat newsletter. A lot of people know you thanks to your contribution and creation of this newsletter. And can you tell us a bit about what is Blockthreat, how it started, and just to get the idea for the listeners?
Sure. It started basically around the time when I did this transition that I described from traditional security into, I guess, blockchain security. And it was really, at first, it was, I wanted to have the resource that I would read regularly. That's something that I was used to in traditional security about like, what are the news, who got hacked, how they got hacked, what can I learn from it, what is the research? But there were actually resources that existed at the time. But they were focused on very specific things. There was times even before the Rect did not exist at that time. There was one newsletter that was focused on Ethereum specific news, but the world at that time was much wider. There were compromises. Blockchain, that was the time of 51% attacks on a daily basis. It seems like exchanges were hacked.
So
I really wanted to broaden that scope to cover the whole blockchain space. Now it seems like we're refocusing back into Web3, but at the time it was more events were happening outside of smart contracts than inside. So I created this newsletter and got inspiration from a lot of existing publications. And frankly, it was a forcing function. It was a forcing function for me to feel obligated. Every week, I have to learn about what's going on. And I'm glad that people enjoy it as well, but I did it for very selfish reasons to just like force myself and have some accountability to know what's happening in the industry. And it's been going on for like 4+ years. I can't believe it's been a while.
Yeah. So you basically did it for yourself and open source it later so everyone can enjoy it, which is very nice. So if you guys don't know, Blockthreat is an amazing weekly newsletter that covers all the incidents, all the news, everything that you want to read about blockchain security and Web3 security. So I will leave the link in the description below. You can check it out, subscribe, and get it to your email as well, right?
Yeah.
And how do you keep track and maintain it? Because every week it's like, the information that you have there, you really got all the most interesting and juicy stories there, and even technical writing, deep dives, videos, everything. So how do you keep track on this and maintain it while working at such like amazing team at Coinbase, like Unit 0x?
It takes a lot of time. There was a point where it really took over every free minute that I had. It exploded like 10, 20, more than 10 hours a week to dedicate to the newsletter. So the way that I keep up with things now is I created mass scrapers for everything out there, from Twitter to like websites, blog posts. Like I aggregate all of them. I have like a classification system now where I just have to quickly tag it with keyboard shortcuts. It still takes, I think, like sometimes if it's a busy week, which been kind of busy lately with all the CFI hacks, it still takes like up to 8 hours sometimes a week. So it's a massive time investment.
Wow.
But I'm trying to automate it as much as possible. But I do want to keep it some manual part of it as well, because I do want to actually touch and feel and use and explore. Like it's not like when I look through, let's say there's a hack, right? There was a mixing hack. I don't just say like, oh, mixing got hacked. Reason unknown. Some SaaS got compromised. Like I actually go in and see like, okay, what are the on-chain addresses? Who are the actors? Are they in my database? Like, have I seen those addresses before? Where are they sending the money? Where they got the money from? If there's like oftentimes there are reports of compromises for DeFi projects. I usually make sure that I collect all the indicators, like who the attackers are, and then root cause analysis. Most of the time it's pretty good, what's publicly available. But I try to verify that. I really try to actually look at the transactions. Like, okay, is this a price oracle manipulation? Yeah, okay. Or maybe it was something off, or some nuance.
Some rug pull or some private key. Yeah.
Exactly. So that probably takes the most time. Like research articles, like, okay, I'm not going to just give you a research article. It's like, okay, good luck, enjoy. Like I actually try to read them. Not all of them. That's impossible. But some really interesting ones, I try to jump in and understand what's happening.
Yeah, so obviously you're utilizing automation and tools and scraping, but it's a lot of manual work, as you mentioned, 4 and 8 hours. But this is also a way for you to keep on track, right? To learn what happened through this week. And it's kind of connected to what you do in Coinbase, because if you do the mixing hack, it might be a new assignment for your team to research it and see like what happened, or do attribution for the attackers, which is kind of like connects to your current job. And it's cool that most of your job is towards like Blockthreat. Like, I mean, whatever you do in Coinbase, I believe it's like 80% of it is like whatever happens in Blockthreat, you go and like try to investigate it, and it's kind of like combines.
Yeah, like we need to know, like our jobs is to protect Coinbase. There are many customers. Again, think of like my mind always goes to there's a family out there and they have money. Like I don't want them to lose money. I would feel horrible if I missed something or I could have prevented something and I didn't catch that. So I just take some ownership in that. So that's a motivator. So a lot of it, like I guess threat intelligence that I collect from the newsletter does go back into my normal work. And a lot of times we select what is the next project or investigation we conduct based on what's going on in the industry, as well as our own collection.
That's very cool. So guys, again, if you want to go check out in the link in the description, the link for Blockstack, subscribe, and you won't regret. It's an amazing newsletter. And usually in this podcast, we talk about Web3 security in terms of auditing contests, tips and tricks of how to get better in auditing. But this is a unique podcast, and we're going to talk about the other side, the dark side, where people don't talk usually, which is like the monitoring, the IR, the attribution of attackers, threat intelligence, tooling, which is quite new and exciting. And I hope the audience are going to enjoy it. And let's start to talk about monitoring. So we do the auditing, we deploy to mainnet, but then, right, in traditional cybersecurity, we have SOC, we have SIEM system, Security Information Event Manager. We have teams that are sitting and watching 24 hours for incidents. There are a lot of false positives. Some of them are false negatives. But, this thing is already considered under SOC, under SIEM. It's very regulated. Now, how are we doing in Web3 security in terms of monitoring compared to traditional cybersecurity? Are there any teams monitoring smart contracts? Are there any SIEM, Security Information Operation Systems, that help us create those monitoring rules, collect this data and create those rule bases and filter those false positives? So it's a bit broad question, but let's just talk a bit about monitoring.
Yeah, well, I guess monitoring in block, there was always monitoring, some form of monitoring within our space. Like if you look back at the DAO hack, right? People realized there was a hack because they were watching for on-chain transactions, and we're going back in time to 2016. They may not have caught the exploit just as it happened, but they realized soon enough that something is amiss. So I would say up to maybe a year ago, most of the monitoring was done by volunteers. They were just watching the chain. Something
It's
is
kind
weird.
of
And
open source. Sorry to interrupt, but now I think about it, it's like an open source SOC, because if you have a SOC in a company, it's only a small certain team that have access to these logs and to the SIEM operating system. But because we are talking about blockchains, the blockchain is open, the blockchain explorers are open to everyone, and you have people that are in stake because they have money in the protocol or they hold the protocol token. So it's their incentive to go and analyze the transactions. And so we have like, it's actually an advantage of Web3 security on top of Web2 security. We have SOC volunteers, like you describe it. It's cool. I didn't think about it.
exactly. So everything is on chain. People are watching. People don't want to lose their investments. So they're very interested in setting up alerts and maybe custom scripts to see if something is strange happening. What we've seen about maybe like a couple of years back, again, we were very audit focused, very consulting audit focused. So you have companies like PeckShield, BlockSec, and Slowmist, and on. There's like the big ones that they got really good at catching live exploits. So and for them, it's really beneficial because it drives business, right? Like if they are the first ones to catch a vulnerability and publish a nice analysis of what the issue is, it drives consulting business toward them to say like, hey, like I trust these guys and they seem to be in the know.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah, so their primary motivator is they're monitoring as a very good sourcing for future clients. And that model works. I mean, projects get notified sooner rather than later. As good as volunteers are, they probably have varying degrees of expertise and tooling and capabilities. So it's good that we have more professional entities who are fully dedicated to this. I pointed out a while back, like, I mean, PeckShield especially, they just consistently catch these hacks. Like, I don't know how many people and what tools they have monitoring. I mean, they probably have like a whale watch for, I guess, hacks sitting there. And I mean, they must have someone on it 24/7 to analyze, because there's also going to be a lot of noise to go through to find the real compromise.
Yeah, and the way they notify the project is usually public through Twitter, because it's gonna bring the most amount of engagement. Hey, you might wanna take a look. You know, it's like under the belt, but
that's a whole other debate. Is it under the belt if it's already available to everyone? I mean, are they serving as kind of like one aspect of it is, yeah, like suddenly all the investors can see that the project is hacked and it's going to move assets. But does it remove like some kind of insider action or someone who is better at analyzing? Is there like some kind of arbitrage opportunity for someone who constantly watches for hacks, but privately, and then trades on that information? So you can say that by releasing it to the public, or at least raising awareness that there's an issue without being specific or helping other attackers, copycat attackers, may be a good action. But I'm open to more public announcements, maybe minus additional details so that others don't jump in. But yeah, those are, I mean, an aspect to consider. It's a market moving action to say a protocol is compromised, and you have to be very, very careful about those announcements, because what if you're wrong and suddenly you move the market?
What if you're wrong? What if your information can help other black hats or front runners to steal more money? We saw the Nomad Bridge hack. That was the first decentralized hack, right? There was the vulnerability with this kind of Merkle tree proof. And then people just resubmitted transactions and extracted more funds from the bridge. We had the BlockSec recent saga on Twitter, where they also said something. I don't remember which hack was it, but yeah, there are a lot of questions, ethical questions to ask there.
Yeah, but the truth is, this phenomenon of people piling on is not new. Like I've been tracking actors, and I had this investigation recently. It's like, was this person involved in every big hack in the last year? And I went on this whole investigation. It's like, oh my god, I found the mastermind.
But isn't it like usually front running bots or general front runners, MEV
No,
bots?
that was definitely a manual. There was a person who is watching for major compromises, and then as they happen, they manually
Try
submit,
to replicate.
replay. They redeploy the same contracts. They try to replicate, and they've been doing this for years.
And do they succeed? What is the success rate? What is the success rate of this person
I would say
or
like
group or whatever?
they worth their time. I would say a lot of hacks, they obviously don't work by simply replaying it, or the money's already gone or drained. But I would say 20% of their attempts are successful, which is maybe worth their time.
Yeah, and it's
then
a lot
of course
of money,
you have automated bots. That's a whole other dimension.
It's all other
bots.
topic and question, and which connects also to white hat hacks that happen. And we know some white hat hackers that try to rescue funds, and then there are other MEV bots that were able to rescue the funds before them, and then the funds are gone. So even if you're a white hat hacker and you're trying to rescue funds from a protocol because you found a vulnerability, you might probably you get front run, right? You have so many sophisticated generalized front runners, MEV bots that can just replicate your transaction, deploy your smart contract, and steal the funds before you do, because they have access to nodes, to validators. They are much faster than you are, whatever you're doing. Even if you're using flashbots, you might be good, but in other EVM chains, it's not always available.
Yeah, but that kind of brings me to the next point in evolution of monitoring. Since we're on the monitoring topic, we talked about the consulting, bringing the business in. We now have the professional companies just dedicated to monitoring. That's all they do.
Porta, Cybers, right? We are talking about which companies?
Yeah, exactly. There are quite a few. They're all popped up, it seems, in the last few quarters.
Startup that raise money and capital, usually like millions of dollars in seed funds, seed raise.
Yep. But they all again appeared. They're very new. They're still starting out. They're still trying to figure out the noise signal ratio, which is hard. It's a very hard problem. And then the other part, to be aware in the space, are of course MEV bots. These guys, they are the actual monitoring solutions. They are the ones that truly are watching for profitable transactions. And the most profitable transaction is, of course, an exploit. So we saw it from Curve, when MEV bots, they swooped in and were front running the attackers. And that's a normal occurrence. Like time after time, the bad actors, they don't use private mempools, and they get front run, and then they basically lose everything. Even WhiteHat, you mentioned WhiteHats, sometimes they do like a test transaction on chain, which you should not. And they got front run, or someone follows very quickly of what they're doing, and they're doing the same thing as them. And
the guy you mentioned, he reverse engineered the smart contracts and say, oh, okay, he stole $5, but I will make a better contract now. I will steal all the $5 million in the contract.
Exactly. They watch every single. I've seen a contract which was deployed even before someone was able to use. Someone deployed an exploit contract. The MEV bot was fast enough to analyze that this contract is profitable. No source code available. I guess they brute force through all the publicly accessible functions, understood that you can profit from it. So they emulated all transactions. And then within the next block, we're talking about seconds.
Milliseconds, probably. Seconds. Yeah. This is insane.
They were able to publish their contract where they bytecode modified it to allow for, because there's usually some kind of like access control logic to allow.
Yes, usually it is but this is the easiest to bypass, right? There are kind of like TX origin require statement or like if statement or like message sender, but they easily remove this. But if they're doing more than that, this is something that I didn't hear of, you know? Usually they remove access control, but what about other things, even improving the exploit maybe? They see that they can even extract more money.
I haven't seen improving the exploit, but I've seen automatically removing all access control issues or modifying like where's the benefactor addresses, and then running the exploit even before the original author that deployed the exploit contract on chain was able to do that. And then there was nothing left. That's the level of expertise that we really are dealing with.
So I guess the next thing to be is like the companies that will have the same technology as these bad actors and will be able to actually rescue the funds. This is the future of Web3 security. This is something that we want to invest in. So if you have any startup ideas, well, try to replicate these guys, but do it for good, you know? Raise money to do it and to save money and maybe become, your business model could be all kinds of things. You can be acquired by Coinbase maybe one day, or maybe just revenue model of like 10%, WhiteHat bounty or extortion, you know, the way you define it.
That's another big one.
It's another big one. I'll talk about it later.
Yeah, I think in terms of monitoring where we are today, where we are just trying to get up to speed in terms of can we detect enough, can we actually like alert, like I think a lot of focus for monitoring companies, the latest generation, where they are actually announcing like, hey, like we detected a suspicious transaction. Okay, that's fine. The hacks happen in minutes. By the time someone wakes up at 2 a.m., logs into their computer and looks at that transaction, it's too late. The money's gone. It's still good. There could be even more. Like you want to, you know, control the compromise as much as possible, minimize your losses. But it's still, it's not like when you're faced with a capability where you can automatically rescue funds. We have a bot sitting there generically rescuing funds for others. That's pretty cool.
I think it already exists, by the way, and Blockthreat doing something similar, and they were able to rescue a few millions of dollars. Professor Andy talked about it in DeFi Security Summit, and I also had some discussions with him, and they are doing it. It's pretty cool. And I think more and more companies will start focus on that. Maybe you guys are also working on something similar. I don't know.
This is the way. Like this is something like going from intrusion monitoring, so the 1990s of traditional security, to the future, which is intrusion prevention. Which is taking action. So Blockthreat, they I forgot what was the hack. Paraspace. Paraspace was one example where Blockthreat was able to see a failed transaction. The attacker was kind of like fumbling around, and then they just swooped in and took it all. That's a perfect example.
It's beautiful.
That's where we really want to be. Like there's like other, I don't want to name drop all the products out there, but people are exploring this, but it will take time to fine tune what constitutes an incident, what constitutes a hack, what parameters we need to define there, and then see if we can automatically rescue. That's the I guess the North Star that we should be following.
For sure. Now, all the private key compromises, rug pulls is something we cannot do because we don't have access to those private keys. But all the open vulnerabilities, kind of that you exploit some kind of logical flaw in the protocol, some kind of flash loan attack is involved, Oracle manipulation attack. This is something that we can definitely mitigate through this technology that is probably in the working, and they're probably going to pop up more companies that are doing that because it will bring tremendous value to the industry, as I see, as both of us see it.
To a degree. I mean, again, attackers, it's a race. As we evolve our defensive capabilities, attackers will evolve their offensive capabilities. So, attackers will probably switch over to private pools in the future to stop us from having ability to cache them. Then we'll probably need to work with all the builders to maybe implement some kind of generic incident response into builders, maybe. Or we don't rescue the first transaction. Usually attackers don't steal everything in one single
One
hop.
transaction.
At the very least, we'll catch the rest and we'll stop the protocol then. So it will be a continuous race. Like, again, people joining this industry, you're in for it, right? this is it's going to be a long journey and trying to solve this and compete against attackers. But it's a worthwhile thing to do. So I want to see this. This is what I want the industry to transition to: mere alerting and monitoring to action,
prevention and action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I believe there are already some attacker groups, black hat attackers groups, South North Korea, that they are more organized, more planned. They're using private mempools. They have a team. They test their exploits. They're trying to do everything in one transaction to make sure they don't leave any money untouched. And it would be interesting if we reach to a level where we can stop these groups, or at least attribute them, arrest them, whatever, in whatever means that we have. Either if it's like on-chain prevention, catch them and get back the money, but different ways.
Yeah. When I would say, let's have a Lazarus discussion. So North Korean APT group, Advanced Persistent Threat APT group, that's a different animal. Like what we've been talking about so far are usually like
in the basement, like Euler hacker. Euler hacker.
Exactly. So this is, some are professional attackers, some are just kids. If you read the interview, like he had this epiphany that this is the attack. These are the smart contract level attacks. When you deal with what the tactics used by North Korean and other APT groups, they usually go for processes. They go for private key compromises. They use spear phishing techniques, malware, and so on.
Traditional things that we know from traditional cybersecurity, basically.
Yes, and what we've seen, like to address that, we need to but we're focused on Web3 capabilities, monitoring, detection, response capabilities. To address these groups, we need to go back and talk about Web2 detection, response, and preventive capabilities as well. Because what these groups are into, like, they will target your engineer, fake job, and they will use traditional all-day vulnerabilities. They'll send you WinRAR files. They'll send you PDF files with malware and so on. And that's much harder to do. That requires back-end thought process. That requires us thinking through not just how do we make sure our smart contracts are audited, but who controls the keys for those smart contracts, and how are those keys managed for those contracts, and where are those keys recorded? Are they in your database? Are they recorded in some kind of, did they show up in your logging system which is a SaaS in the cloud somewhere, and you just accidentally dumped your keys there?
Did you commit them to your GitHub repo in your .env file?
Yeah. So that requires us, for that kind of threat actor, we need to go back to Web2, because that's their background. I mean, Lazarus and other North Korean groups, my first introduction to them was back in Bangladesh. Bangladesh central bank compromise, where they've been sitting on a system. So Bangladesh central bank compromise, they were able to forge requests to the New York Federal Reserve over months, especially crafted requests to transfer $1 billion. And the way they were foiled is that they accidentally put a comma in a number which you're not supposed to put commas. If not for that tiny little mistake, that would have gone through.
Was some kind of SQL injection, or like?
No, they were. I can share the maybe the post-mortem on that one, but it was a simple typo that stopped $1 billion escaping from the Bank of Bangladesh.
Wow.
But these guys, the point is that they are expert Web2 operators. They understand how to exfiltrate data. They know how to sit on the system and be stealth. And now they're applying years of hard-earned expertise in attacking Web2 projects onto DeFi space. And oftentimes we're so focused on our smart contracts that is feels like shooting fish in the barrel. We're worried about someone, flash loaning our treasury or some lending protocol, and then your developers, they don't have any endpoint security, and they are logging everything into some cloud account with no 2FA, something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, I think in your recent talk in DSS, DeFi Security Summit, you talked about the ratio between like traditional like Web2 hacks that money is getting stolen from crypto and blockchain, and DeFi Web3 hacks. Do you remember what was the ratio like in terms of percentage?
Let me look it up. So my calculation was 6-1 per. So average profit for traditional security incident was, I counted, around $2 million.
Wow.
Versus BlockSec at $12 million. So of course, these threat actors, they are very curious and interested into transitioning into Web3 space. And they don't need to necessarily become expert, smart contract exploiters, when they can still reuse all of the expertise and tools and infrastructure that they built up targeting traditional Web2 organizations. When they
target exchanges, target DeFi teams, target like users with a lot of money. The same techniques, just different targets. But I bet those Lazarus on the other side are gonna be initiating a Unit 0x Black Hat team soon. These guys that are professionalized in protocols hacks and.
Yes, if there's a need, right? Like they operate just like any other company. They have limited time. They have metrics. And
yeah, malicious metrics.
They seem to be so successful. Like we can see through on-chain tracking of who the bad actors are, and we can cluster them together. But now we have official law enforcement confirmation that it is Lazarus here, it was Lazarus there. What are their profits so far this year?
But you can do nothing about it. You can do nothing about it, right? Because there are no relations between the United States and North Korea. So even though we have attribution and law enforcement rules, can you do anything about it?
Well, you're certain. Well, it depends. If that money hits centralized exchanges, then you can do something about it. You can freeze those assets, but it requires you to track those assets in real time over many months and sometimes years when that money starts moving finally, and see if they make mistakes. And that's the advantage of maybe our industry versus, or maybe a disadvantage, our industry versus, traditional finance. That with the traditional finance, all the same thing happened. The same laundering, the laundering in general was happening, but it required, I remember there was this whole operation where North Korea set up mules standing by at ATM machines on a certain hour, on a certain minute, to at the same time start extracting stolen assets.
Wow.
Right. So now, like with cryptocurrency, it's not that cryptocurrency field made it easier or harder. You can do different things. Now you have mules who are ready to move funds into compromised exchange accounts and do the swaps there. So there are some advantages and disadvantages, but the advantage is that we can actually see the mules operating and trying to launder those assets. Whereas in traditional finance, by the time the card goes into the ATM machine or someone walks into a bank with fake identity to cash out stolen proceeds, they're gone. And it's very hard to get that record. And that record can be obtained by a very limited group of law enforcement agencies in the world. Where for us, it's all open. We can see them moving money to this one exchange or to this other swap and so on. We can track them all together. As you mentioned, the open source SOC, there's also the open source investigations where we all are watching this.
Which is cool.
So pros and cons.
Definitely. And so the hacks that we see in like DeFi protocols, Oracle manipulation and such, re-entry attacks, who are the actors behind it? I know that most of the time it's hard to attribute them and find them, but it's definitely not those Lazarus and North Koreans kind of groups.
Those are not their tactics. The APT groups, they focus on their traditional APT techniques, or so far that has been the case. The attacks, the advanced attack, the reentrancies and these elaborate reward manipulation schemes and liquidations,
Governance
those are,
attacks. Yeah, all these kind of things.
for the most part, they're perpetrated by crypto natives. So these are the folks from our own industry who are perpetrating this. Again, for that
it's like a mystery. They are among us. It's like a mystery, the murderers among us.
Yeah, but like every once in a while they get unmasked, right? Like, so one example was the
Avi Eisenberg, Euler attacker.
Avi Eisenberg, indexed finance. Every once in a while, the mask is lifted and we can see who they are. And there's like smart kids for the most part who like they could make all that same money just through honest means, but they chose that path. They chose the path of more excitement and greater consequences.
So smart kids, be careful because Peter is watching. I'm watching, and the more time passes, we watch you. Eventually, the mask will be revealed.
Smart kids, take Johnny's class, adopt bug bounty programs, make millions, and go to bed feeling good about yourself that you helped a project save hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're a hero for doing that.
Exactly.
That's a much more positive feeling to go to bed with every night.
Definitely, 100% agree. So shifting from monitoring to incident response. So people that are not familiar with what incident response is and are newcomers, they didn't come from cybersecurity, can you just explain in one sentence what it means, incident response from traditional cybersecurity?
Sure. It's hopefully formalized process to minimize and mitigate impact from security incidents. So the first part is you want to make sure that you have some process that to follow. You're not like just flailing hands, like we are under attack, we're under attack. You know what to do. Everyone on your team knows exactly what you need to do.
You're like SOPs, like guidebooks. Like what do we do when shit hits the fan?
Yes. And then the other part is the process part. So preparation, knowing what your weak points are, knowing what you need to look for, knowing how to investigate those things. And then the last part, security incident. So knowing how to define a security incident versus, I don't know, your website is down. Knowing how to say, hey, I'm about to lose my entire treasury, or I'm about to lose maybe $1,000. Can this wait until Monday morning? Or do I wake up on Saturday at 2 a.m. and deal with this? So it's a process. It's a process that helps you survive.
So we have incident response for a while in traditional cybersecurity, and we recently got a bit more awareness around it in Web3 security. What are the difference between incident response in traditional cybersecurity and Web3 securities? Advantages, disadvantages, what's different?
Sure. Well, we already hit a few points. One, it's open source, right?
It's open source.
Everyone sees what's going on. And frankly, our community is freaking awesome. Like, look how many volunteers, they jump in and help these projects. Like we have SEAL 911 project. So Sam CZ-san just recently announced it a few months ago. We have volunteers that frankly have been in the trenches with projects from the start. Like go all the way back to the DAO. There was a group formed immediately that helped with the recovery, hacking back. Those are the advantages. It's open source. The disadvantage is that you're dealing with money. Oftentimes with and the process is moving really fast. In traditional security, bad actors, for the most part, unless we're dealing with like ransomware or the Bangladesh incident that I mentioned, for the most part, they're after data. So they want to steal your social security numbers,
blackmail you.
PII. Yeah.
Sell credit cards on darknet, ransomware your machines and data.
Exactly. And that takes the time. Like usually, like when we talk about, I remember when we were doing the investigations, attackers were usually sitting before detection. And before they started exfiltrating data, they were sitting and slowly increasing their access, pivoting through the system for months.
Very
so
quietly.
There was a very large...
Without leaving logs, without triggering those incident alerts in the SIEM systems, doing it very slowly, very carefully with a lot of OPSEC.
Yep. So lots of potential opportunities to catch the bad actors, to start an incident. Within Web3, it's wide open, but it's also very fast. Like you look at, I don't know, we mentioned Euler. Euler took, 15 minutes, start to finish? How fast can your response can really be to, like, you're not going to have people sitting 24/7. Like, one, projects cannot afford this, to have a staff 24/7 operation, unless you're something very large. But for the most part, this is a disadvantage, is that one, it moves very fast, and two, we're dealing with money. Like once the assets start moving, they're not recoverable. You cannot, under a few scenarios where they end up somewhere interesting, we could talk about those scenarios. There's no way you can recover that.
Exactly.
So those are the disadvantages.
So there are advantages and disadvantages. Also, the fact that the blockchain is irreversible. You know, if it's like database, you can reverse them. If the money went through Tornado Cash and Mix and went through certain exchanges in countries that don't have kind of law enforcement, collaborations with the states or European countries, it might be also problematic. There are a lot of challenges also involved in this.
For the most part, irreversible. There are a few incidents where blockchains were halted. That's the Binance hack incident, where they did halt this whole chain and put in a block list for the attacker addresses so they couldn't move them around. But with that small caveat, irreversible.
So it's more unique and different. Yeah, of course. Yeah, so it's more unique so it's different than Web2 security. And how do we bridge the gap, right? Because attack happens within 15, 20 minutes. It's not like month where we have chances to catch the intruder in the network. It's like, that's it, it happens. So what kind of different approach we need to take as incident response professionals, as cybersecurity professionals?
Yes, in terms of first minutes of the compromise, we need to focus on circuit breakers. So we need an ability with minimal required action and time to pause the protocol. I know people are not fond of that, like, oh, there's a centralization risk, but at the very least, you should be able to like run up and break glass and start the fire alarm and then investigate. Just
a word about its centralization risk. Yeah, if a protocol has a pause method, that's better than upgradable proxy or sweep funds function, right? So we do need pause functions. We don't need, I don't know, upgrade logic, or sometimes we do need them, or change owner.
That stuff comes later.
Drain contract, only owner functions.
Yeah, the first thing, like within the incident process, you want to contain the risk. Like we need a fast way to deal with 15-minute long attacks. We need a very fast containment. The other part is, something that we can steal is starting to build and starting to prepare for incident risk, like actual incident response on your team. We all don't want to believe it's going to happen, or sometimes we can try to rely on open source. But what if Sam is sleeping? He's a human being. You can't expect to solicit help from security, like Web3 security researchers. There are times when they respond very quickly. There are other times they come back to you in 5 to 6 hours and say, you may want to take a look at this. So even PeckShield is not, on point 24/7. They do miss some hacks. You cannot, I guess, point is, you cannot rely on Twitter and Telegram for your incident response.
Exactly.
You need to have your internal
teams
process.
Like SOC monitoring and people and SOPs that once something happens, you can do something about it.
I would say even simpler. Like, most DeFi teams out there, they're 5 to 6 people, maybe even less. Just talk to everyone on your team and make an informal agreement that we are all on incident response. We're all responsible when something happens. These are the action that we'll take. I don't care if you're a security professional or your job is comms. You will have a role. If your comms go start preparing what messages you're going to put on Twitter and when you're going to do this. If you are an engineer, well, guess what? You're a security engineer now, because anything in DeFi is security engineer. So start thinking, where's your pause button? How do you investigate where the money is going? Start building up your investigative capabilities.
I don't think
Be
they're
self-sufficient.
I don't think they're even aware of it, So I would imagine that there would be some kind of service of some professional, such as yourself or other professionals, that come to these DeFi teams and tell them what to do, prepare them to the doomsday, right? Prepare some kind of SOPs, give like responsibilities to team members, tell them, prepare for them Twitter messages, prepare for them like set of actions they can do in case something like this happens. Another profession that will evolve in this industry, right? A person that goes and give consultation, not around smart contract auditing, but around incident response for DeFi teams.
Correct. I mean, my past experience at Mandiant, there's no Mandiant for Web3. Like I want a company, or Mandiant, CrowdStrike, I'm biased obviously because I work, but there's no company that you can pick up a phone and say, I want a complete incident response process. Help me. We had, I think it was the Mixin compromise. They did call in Mandiant for their hack. So they swooped in, but then we need a crypto native company that can come in and dedicate resources, train consultants, teams that can either fly in or at least jump on a meet together to go through the process.
That's very
if you're thinking
interesting.
Of startup ideas,
Let's do that, Peter. Let's do it together. No, really, there are so many new auditors popping up, which is great. Okay, there are a lot of auditing firms, but I've never seen like group of people are offering this kind of service. And I think the people that will be the pioneers and the startup, like the guys that will go and master like incident response in DeFi, and they're also crypto native, so they know what are multi-sigs, what are private keys, what are smart contracts, Tornado Cash and such, and they will start offering those kind of services to DeFi protocols. They will do awesome work for the industry, and they will also get a lot of value out of it, because I don't think they will have that many competitors. And so, yeah, startup idea. I would do it with you, Peter. Let's do it.
Sure.
No, it's very interesting. That's why it's so exciting. There are so many opportunities to contribute and also make money at the same time. Just be creative, think what is needed, and go for it.
Yeah. I mean, we should start a counter for startup ideas at this point.
Yeah.
I think we hit on two or three at least through the stock.
I think two. One was the MEV, right? The MEV bot that save money, like Blockthreat one, but they do it on scale and actually able as a business model. And the second one would be like consultation to DeFi teams regarding IR and forensics, and mainly IR monitoring forensics. Super cool. So what?
We need to come up with one more at least.
One
by
more.
The end.
Exactly. We will. Don't worry. We still have plenty of subjects to discuss. So IR is very different than traditional cybersecurity. And what you're doing mainly in Coinbase is more like, I would say, forensics rather than IR, or maybe correct me if I'm wrong. More
forensics. That's a whole other field. So forensics, investigation. We do a lot of bug hunting as well. So we do smart contract analysis and do bug hunting, but very like tactical, like large swaths of vulnerability classes that we try to eliminate. My dream, an example when, again, in traditional security, there was a class of vulnerabilities called format string bugs, right? And people identified it, they understood how to mitigate it, and for the most part, the whole class of vulnerability was eliminated. That's the kind of thing. Like I want to eliminate a whole class of vulnerabilities for, let's say, reentrancy, or price oracle manipulation. Like take the big ones. Like reentrancy. Like if you saw my DSS talk, is already like in the bottom right corner until Curve came along, but it's not a reentrancy vulnerability. It was a compiler
issue with a Viper.
But price oracle is on the tippy top, followed by reward manipulation. So like Euler, like you try to do tricky things to extract more value. That's the kind of things I want to solve.
And how do we solve it? With tooling, with audits, with
education, developer education, training. There are ideas about eliminating, if we go back to reentrancy, like there are ideas about eliminating reentrancy on compiler level or EVM level. Let's brainstorm this. I don't think it's an open question, which is what makes it so exciting. May or may not be a third startup idea.
Yeah, it's
Of
very
developing a
interesting.
language or approach or training for developers.
How to eliminate it on the post-deployment phase, not in the audit phase, because audit is not 100% tight. There are always vulnerabilities or logical vulnerabilities that either are missed or are being introduced through smart contract logical upgrades and state changes.
Yep.
So how do we eliminate them on the blockchain level? MEV, the first top idea, would be one interesting direction.
Maybe MEV, if there are any opportunities. I mean, we have a field of formal verification. It exists, but it's not as accessible maybe to all the people out there. What can be done?
Definitely.
We have, can we steal ideas from, again, traditional programming? Can we build in these kind of defenses into language itself, or create standardized bulletproof libraries that people use? And for the most part, we did, right? Like, again, going back to Curve.
Solidity, yeah.
If we go back to Curve example, right? It wasn't an issue in the language. It wasn't an issue in the code itself. It was on compiler level, a bug way back when, which allowed this. So if we expose their vulnerability through a compiler bug, can we create a compiler feature that prevents now? We eliminated integer overflows in the latest version Solidity.
0.8.
What can we do? Can we add those kind of compiler features to eliminate other classes of vulnerabilities?
That's very interesting. Very interesting question. I think the industry will go there as well, for sure. So in your day-to-day life, you're doing forensics, attribution, threat modeling, all kinds of threat intelligence, all kinds of things. Do you use any tools? Like what kind of tools help you do your job better currently?
For a lot of stuff that we do write custom tools. So for example, just the other day, I had to write a tool to automatically calculate Bitcoin addresses that go through Avalanche bridges, because they use like a formula and we wanted to track funds that go through those bridges. So a lot of custom tooling. Then we use, we have an internal blockchain analytics tool. So Coinbase owns one. And then for the most part, blockchain explorers. The tools that I really like are less the ones that try to obfuscate and generalize data. I like really diving in. Like the really interesting finds are always in the details that a lot of these tools miss. Like for the most part, blockchain analytics tools, they're good at giving you like general flows of transactions. But I like diving into the cold data itself, or diving into like attackers' smart contracts. So if we're talking about tool, I use DDubs, decompiler tool, and also Heimdall RS. That's another decompiler tool to like really understand like what's in the contract. Are there interesting signatures in that contract? Is the attacker doing something weird that can help me track them down? Because oftentimes they do. And for that, I use, I mentioned Heimdall, DDub, just for like really good decompiling. Cast from the Foundry toolkit. It's an excellent, like it's a Swiss Army knife utility to query the blockchain, to send transactions, but also to decode them.
So can you just say it again? Because I want to put links in the description. DDub, how do you write DDub?
Well, it's a DEDAUB. So that's it's a website with an excellent decompiler. So you can throw in bytecode in there. So I've been using it a lot for like just looking at exploit contracts. Heimdall
and
for
Heimdall, H-I-M, Heimdall, H-E-I-M-D-L, Heimdall.
That's right. And then of course Cast.
Cast, from Foundry, yeah.
And Chisel too sometimes, just to like for quick one-off. But a lot of cast work just to look at historical transaction, historical state.
What
There's a
about
lot of times,
Tenderly?
like
Do you use Tenderly?
also Tenderly for sure to do like transaction debugging analysis.
Mm-hmm.
I like using BlockSec's Metadoc.
Metadoc is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a lot of labeling, and there's a quick shortcut, so I can click, and I'm already in Tenderly or I'm already in DDoP to reverse engineer things.
This is super cool. So what kind of tools are missing, right? You mentioned that you're writing parsers, or like what would you say is missing? Or maybe nothing is missing. The tools are sufficient.
No, I would say the place where I keep on writing one-offs a lot is just dealing with transaction analysis. So there's some tools which get as far as, they can, if there's an ABI available, they'll give me like a nice breakdown. But oftentimes I need to go deeper, like dealing with nested call data. Like if we're dealing with multi-calls or dealing with like execute transactions where you're like forwarding on things, dealing with cross-chain transactions, like actually not just decoding a 4-byte, but knowing what each protocol does. And that's really hard, right? How do bridges operate? Where do I encode? Where's the destination chain? So that requires a lot of manual work. I guess I'm looking for a Swiss Army cast-like, or maybe cast itself, maybe contributing to cast to evolve querying capabilities, like really decoding and interpreting data.
How about Dune Analytics? Dune Analytics?
Definitely. So a lot of hunting through Dune Analytics. So we do, if we look for signatures that, like some behavior that attacker is doing, we do a lot of that as well. Yep.
So guys, if you want to start, if you want Peter to hire you one day, start mastering those tools that were mentioned, right?
Learn SQL and then learn Dune Analytics, because we spend more time in Dune than on blockchain explorers.
Makes sense.
And sorry, not just blockchain explorers, but also like blockchain analytics tools, like chain analysis type tools, because there are limitations. Like we found that at some point we have to deal with raw data.
Definitely. So part of your job, you really investigated very interesting cases like hacks and exploits. Can you tell us about an interesting story? It could be something recent or something from the past. Recently, we had mixing, we had HTX. We also, in previous discussion, you and I talked about Fortress hack or Remitano. So tell us some sexy stories.
Well, sure. I mean, the last few that you mentioned, they're kind of like more of on a CFI side. I personally like taking apart like smart contract hacks, really understanding how the attacker operates and the drama that follows it. The Euler compromise was by far.
Take us through the drama, through the Euler hack. Like what was it like?
Yeah, well, one, it was a almost $200 million hack. So that was a record-setting thing, and we definitely want to investigate those things. And then watching the attacker trying to, first the begging begins, you start seeing this on-chain messages, and then the attacker just randomly sends a bunch of ETH to this person. Then the attempt to frame North Korea, that was hilarious. So the Euler attacker decided to send some, I forgot exact amount, but some ETH to North Korea actor to make it appear like they are related, or it's to frame them kind of. But obviously anyone who spent any time analyzing behavior and tactics of Lazarus knows, like, no, you're not, this is not. Nice try.
Yeah, in traditional Web2 security, we do attribution to the attacker identity, which is what you describe. You're trying to attribute the attacker behind the Euler hack. And usually we have like evidence, and there is stronger evidence and weaker evidence, right? So if the attacker sent money to some kind of address, this is weaker evidence because maybe he's trying to frame someone. But if the attacker account, EO account, or contract that initiated attack, where it's funded from, this is a much stronger evidence piece because it connects the attacker even more.
Definitely that. Also behavioral. Like, what are the attacks? Like, North Koreans are not degens. Okay, they have a very specific preset way that they launder and move assets, and we know what they are. And the Euler attacker, when they send money, North Koreans would never send money to a random beggar.
To a random beggar, or to someone that he begged on chain and said like, I lost all my money, or someone gave him a tip that USDT or USDC might block you, and then he just randomly sent them like millions of dollars in ETH.
Yeah, nation states, they don't care. Can you imagine this is a military operation. There's a soldier sitting at a computer, and there's a general sitting behind you. And then you have to explain to your superior that you just sent 100 ETH to this random
but it
beggar.
was nice. Yeah, it was nice.
It's like, off with your head. So there's that aspect. And then the craziest part in the Euler compromise was, of course, North Korea replying.
Oh, so they replied.
Yes. So
okay.
Once the Euler attacker, they send them some 100 ETH. I think North Korea replied with a message, an encrypted message with a link to
spear phishing. Yeah, it was some kind of spear phishing attempt.
I'm 50-50. Probably some aspect was spear phishing. They were trying to spear phish the attacker. However, I would be very curious to see what was in that message. I wonder if it was a personal invitation to go visit Pyongyang,
to go visit North Korea and get the money.
Yeah, come join us.
Come join us.
We appreciate you. You're always welcome. I'm guessing maybe this is part of a speculation, but this is how wild this industry gets, right? Like, we have attackers communicating with rogue nation states on chain.
This is insane.
Then the whole drama where the guy became apologetic, probably because he was revealed.
He was scared,
identifying themselves by one name, and then the backstabbing that was happening. It appears there were like multiple actors, and they were reaching out saying like, I will reveal everything about this act, the other person. I don't want any bounty or anything in return. And then news of that attacker, the original Euler attacker, being in French jail, and that fell around the time when DSS was happening. So there was a lot of debate in the community. Should we go stop by that jail, see if he's there to say hello?
Maybe come as a guest of honor and give a talk on the DSS summit.
Yeah, do you want to do a remote talk from a jail cell? Or so this is wild. This does not happen in traditional security. Like, you don't have that kind of visibility into the inner workings of the attack, and also what happens after the fact. And I like using Euler as a kind of a case study because it's so revealing about so many characteristics of what's going on. The openness of all the exploitation, detection and reaction time, the sophistication of the attacker and the exploit, followed by unsophistication of them trying to launder assets and their operational security.
How come it didn't get front run? Did you use flashbots?
I have to look back. I think they may have.
Yeah. Okay.
Or at least part of it.
I mean,
I'm pretty sure part of it
to be a black hat or a white hat or bug hunter, whatever, you don't need only skills at exploiting smart contracts, finding vulnerabilities, and writing malicious contracts to exploit them. But as you mentioned, you do need also skills of like MEV, front running, flashbots, private mempools, and also laundering if you're a bad actor. So usually the hacker don't possess those skills. Sometimes.
It's a varying set of skills, which advanced groups like Lazarus do possess. They do have a fairly large and optimized process to steal, to, I guess, normal APT groups. They have people who are the infiltrators, the scouts. Then they have people who are good at infiltrating. Then there are good people who are good at pivoting. Then you have the laundering operation. So these are teams operating.
That's how it works in nation state level. From experience, I can tell. You have different teams that are specialized in every stage of the attack, the kill chain, so-called.
Mm-hmm. And here we have, maybe a few folks who are very good at attacking, but not good at SecOps. And in fact, now that I think of it, regarding being front run, they were front run. that example that I mentioned with MEVBot quickly, and then understanding that this is a profitable contract that was just deployed and running the exploit, that's exactly what happened in Euler. The very first exploit, I think they were stealing, I want to say USDC or something like that. That transaction was front run by redeploying the exploit contract and rerunning it. Unfortunately, the way the contract was written, it still benefited the original attacker, but the point remains that the exploit was executed not by the original attacker who intended to do it, but by MEVBot.
And which says that we can actually, it's a POC of something that we can do to save funds in the future that are related to Oracle manipulation attacks, reentry bugs, whatever.
Exactly. That's when the light bulb went on. If automated bots can do this for the sake of pure financial gain, why can't we also use that to
save funds
for security?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And also in the Euler, another thing that is interesting in the Euler bug is that the line is getting blurred, right? Are you a black hat? Are you a white hat? He started as a black hat, and the moment he figured out that suddenly he became a white hat. Oh yeah, it was a mistake, right?
Let me stop it right there. The person who perpetrates an unauthorized hack is a criminal and will remain a criminal, regardless of what agreements and what gratitude you get in response.
Code is law, code is law saying, and yeah, but
no. Just because you went to the bank and stole a bunch of money and scared the hell out of people there, and then you suddenly, after you're found out, you run in and return the money, you think that you're a good guy? No, you're a criminal. You deserve justice, and nothing that you do after the fact removes the decision that you made. You made your choice. You could have contacted the protocol. You could have worked with them. At the very least, you could have white-hatted it. And if you thought there was imminent risk, that's the blurring line. But if you stole the money and you started laundering it and then giving it to North Korea or someone else, no, you're a criminal. Like there's this, I can see notes from projects after they pay the ransom. Let's call it what it is. It's not a bug bounty. It's a 10% ransom to minimize how much was stolen. And these projects later on say, we will not pursue criminal action against you as a gratitude for what you did. And then they call them white hats. I understand why the reality of it, of why we need to do this.
On the other side, sorry for interrupting, but on the other side, think about some security researcher that sitting his ass off, working a lot, like he has very unique skills, very smart, sit like for weeks, finding this bug in a protocol, because this is what he does for a living. This is what he does for a living. And then he submits the bug through Immunify, and suddenly the protocol says like, runaways and don't pay, and then they get delisted, or maybe they downgrade it from high severity to low severity, even though he has a POC that shows how he can steal $10 million when they pay him like $1,000. So how do we make all parties happy, right? Because this security researcher, if he would do traditional cybersecurity and we would find a vulnerability in iOS, new version, RCE, zero click, he would get $2 million for that, right? We want to make sure to incentivize those white hats. So where does this blurred line goes with this 10% bounty extortion, or maybe bounty, whatever you call it? How do we like incentivize white hats, but at the same time, it doesn't become an extortion?
Sure. I mean, that's why bug bounties exist. But if you're a security researcher and you make that choice that you found an ODay and you made a decision to use it and to exploit a protocol, you crossed the line. We can sugarcoat it however we want to. They're doing it for the better and so on. You crossed the line. Even if you return all that money, you probably ruined the protocol and their reputation. You caused innumerable distress to project's founders, to users who have their life savings invested in it. Even if they get it back, who's going to give back the time that they had to work? There were stories of people, they were supposed to be in the hospital attending to their newborn, and they had to cut that precious moment short. They had to leave the hospital and their newborn child to go deal with the incident. Who's going to give this parent time back?
This is a very unique example. Okay, but I get it.
This is what happened. This is a real example. And then to go back and say like, oh, just kidding, here's the money back. All that stress that I caused you, like, oh, let's move past it. I don't think that's fair, and that should not be. It should be. We took the road where we minimize the overall impact, but it should not be applauded as a hero. Heroes are people like Sam, people that proactively look for bugs, that work with projects to mitigate those threats ahead of time, that help projects to, if they need to white hat themselves, then they help them do this. That's a hero. People who hack the protocol and then get scared, or they get doxxed and then they negotiate a higher ransom, they're not heroes, they're criminals.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm on purpose, I'm challenging you. So how do we still keep incentivize those white hats to keep finding bugs and getting valid bounties? When you see, recently on Twitter, so many projects are getting delisted. So many people are saying that their bug didn't get qualified. How do we keep them incentivized as doing this? How did we do it in Web3 security? Let's learn from the history, right?
Yeah, there was, okay, let's look at Web2 security. For the longest times, we had projects like Google. I remember they used to pay just a few $1,000s for bugs in Google Chrome, right? And how did that change? Is that we evolved through this bug bounty process. So Microsoft was one of the pioneers that started the bug bounty program after the operating system was hacked basically on a weekly basis. There were bugs.
The Wednesday,
the
Thursday, what was it? Like a patch Thursday, patch. How every week there was Patch Tuesday. Yeah. You see, I forgot all my cybersecurity. I used to sing it like patch. Oh, it's Patch Tuesday. Yeah, new security fixes.
Yeah, I mean, so there was a debate and we solved it. Immunify, when they came in on the market and they started giving rewards, not based, before that we had HackerOne programs that were still in the thousands of dollars rewards, right? That did not take into account that what attackers are stealing here is not data. And that
money.
The worst case that could happen for the most part to companies that lose data, they have to write this apology letter. We're sorry, we lost all your data.
Reputation.
Yeah, maybe we'll buy you a year subscription to a credit monitoring business. We're sorry. But for the most part, they all survive. If a hack happens to DeFi projects, they cease to exist.
Just die.
And I think Immunify addressed this by significantly increasing bug bounty amounts to compensate, to make the math work. And I think that is the path, that is the way. That's one side. The other part is what works in those ransom 10% payouts. What actually works to help attackers return that money. And it was the community coming together as investigators and identifying where the attackers are, proactively freezing, like we saw Tether recently froze millions of dollars from, I have to look up the exact hack, but community coming together, blocking exit ways, identifying who the attackers are. So this involves advanced incident response process, advanced investigative process. So that's the enforcement arm. So using those two, the carrot and the stick, and making sure that we illuminate a good path for people to do the right thing, that will help remove even a thought of like, why would I want to risk my livelihood and future to pull off this hack which I cannot even safely use or spend?
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Sorry, I feel like I'm more critical because, again, like we started with this, I always think when the money's gone, I don't think of like some autonomous contract sitting somewhere on chain. Like I think of the person who invested their livelihood into this thing, and like I feel that pain of losing that, and
Definitely.
it cannot be communicated through a Twitter thread where someone says I just lost my entire life savings.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough point, and it will be interesting how we solve this point as an industry. It will be interesting to do a debate, bring some white hats, bring yourself, and maybe people from Immunify team, and talk it out in a live stream or something. Just idea that pop into my mind.
Yeah, This that would be interesting. I think I really want to avoid creating false incentives for black hats to even attempt the hack and then try to retool themselves at the last moment. Let's not call them white hat bounties. Let's call them ransomware bounties, ransom bounties.
Yeah. So also when we talked about like breaches in blockchain and crypto, we talked about like centralization hacks, like, private keys and such. And then we talked about DeFi and smart contract hacks. But we have something in between, right? So if you remember the recent multi-chain hack that private keys were compromised, there was MPC or something service and private keys were compromised, and the multi-chain wallets got drained $100 million, and it basically destroyed an entire chain. Phantom chain was destroyed because all the TVL in Phantom, or 80% of the TVL, was backed up in this multi-chain wallet. And, the domino effect is just because of wallet private key hack, the whole TVL chain works nothing. The USDC and the whatever tokens are still staked in protocols like Spooky Swap, Spirit Swap, Cream, Iron, Finance, whatever, but it works nothing because the USDC debug on the chain and you don't have a way to bridge it out. So what's your take on this, or perspective on this? How the domino effect, right? How like a DeFi gets hacked, all these hidden risks that we have in DeFi and stuff like that.
Well, I would expand this discussion to include, I think multi-chain was a special case where I think we had foreign government entities involved, where there were, I guess, rumors or some confirmed that some of the founders and then founders' family were arrested by law enforcement, and who knows what deals they made and what access they received. I imagine those arrests, they correspond with seizure of assets, including computers, including your ledgers, and whatever else you use for multi-chain. I would say a more general example would also be like the Axie Infinity scenario, where we have a centralization risk, which was not supposed to be centralized, where we had just a few entities that were the multi-sig that was not properly distributed. The risk exists, and it can be used for good. So we discussed the scenario where we can pause an asset very quickly, and that's kind of it could be abused for denial of service, or it could be used in case of the project getting compromised or frozen or assets seized. It could be used to steal. So I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing to have some degree of centralization. It's what is it that you're allowed to do it, and how do you look at the threat model of the centralization of what is the impact if one key is compromised or 5 keys get compromised? That's the real question. And for the most part, I think some degree of centralization is crucial, especially when the project is getting started, because if you look at governance attacks, so that's towards decentralization, there are cases when this high degree of decentralization can also be abused. And there were scenarios, I think we talked about Steemit a while back.
Beanstalk hack.
Yeah. So bad actors can either mint or they can purchase large amounts of governance tokens, and they can
flash loan.
There were flash loans too. I think there was it Maker, or there was a large protocol that briefly was vulnerable to that. So the other alternative, we also had, of course, the Tornado Cash governance attack that happened. So just because you fully decentralize, it doesn't mean that you'll be safer. It's having clear understanding of the risks and where you are in the lifetime of the project, and then taking necessary mitigation steps. Can you decentralize with a larger community of trusted folks out there? Do we need a body, a governance body for DeFi space in general, where there are anonymous folks or pseudonymous or maybe fully KYC'd folks that we can trust? Can we give one key to Johnny and say, I know Johnny, he's a stand-up guy. I'll give him the key for this project. I know he's not going to rug us. Mm-hmm. So it's not. So I guess what I'm trying to drive to is centralization is not necessarily a risk. And then, of course, you have interesting edge cases like Oasis, right? Wormhole and Oasis, where centralization was taken to a whole next level, where it was used to recover stolen funds. So I think it's a nuanced topic that doesn't have clear answers. There's a scenario where you have protocols that insist that there are no governance actions whatsoever. And if regulatory space changes, that may be the new route. Like, we don't have any governance. We just release a new contract if we need to make an upgrade, and we invite people to switch over. Or we go full centralization, where we have admin, or something in between, where we have a large DAO. All of these have pros and cons.
Yeah, for sure. So I think about the user, the user, it might be a degen, it might even be a VC that is doing some DeFi strategies, and they saw this new exchange, SpiritSwap. They went through the smart contract audit of SpiritSwap. They saw that it's not that centralized. It's a fork from Uniswap v2, and there is a nice MasterChef contract that generates yield. So they stake money in MasterChef and like SpiritSwap, provide liquidity, become a market maker, and then suddenly this other multi-chain bridge get hacked that they didn't even think about it in the risk assessment, and their staked USDC in SpiritSwap worth nothing, and they lost all their money. So the way for users and funds and hedge funds, the risk assessment that they do regarding DeFi strategies or staking programs or liquidity mining should be it's much more complicated, as I see it, because you can fall in so many points. Who thought that because the bridge get hacked, the private key, the MPC, whatever wallet, your DeFi protocol, even though the smart contracts are okay, they audited, it's a fork from Uniswap v2, no changes, no upgradable, yada yada yada, you're still screwed, because you can follow the blockchain level, on the bridge level, or on the DEX or protocol levels. And DeFi is like Lego. Sometimes it's a DEX, and then there is like gauges or voting, rewards, or like yield farming. So there are so many places. So when you do risk assessment, you really need to look through the entire chain.
But users can't do that risk assessment themselves. Like we were talking about startup ideas. Well, how about the
third one? Yes, we got a third one. Okay.
A neutral party, right? There's one, I think it's called DeFi Safety. So they
D.Fi, I think you're mentioning.
D.Fi, they're in the monitoring and scam detection business. There's another product called DeFi Safety, and what they do is they have a large catalog where they review different projects. They have evaluation criteria that they assess a variety of risks. So maybe we need more projects, more startups like this, because I think I'm aware of just one that exists out there that gives normal
to help
consumers,
even hedge funds, users, hedge funds, degens, whatever, provide this data, this risk assessment.
Yep, like layman's terms, very accessible. Here's the centralization score. Here's the contract security score, and on
the
and
blockchain,
on. And users decide.
Security score.
Yep.
Bridge security score, because when you do a smart contract, you usually refer to the smart contracts themselves, right? You don't refer to the blockchain that they are living on, or the bridge that fits in and out. So there needs to be a bigger perspective for the risk assessment.
Sounds like a startup idea. Sounds like
we got a third one.
If I had, before I invested in any given protocol, in any given chain, I can quickly look at the risk profile under a variety of parameters, and then very quickly consume, like, maybe I'll invest a few $1,000s here. But this one I feel pretty safe about. Maybe I'll invest more, and so on. So allow consumers to make educated choices, because they're not going to go this due diligence process for every protocol out there.
So many ideas, so little time.
Well, I think what we're coming to is so many things yet to be built and implemented, how early we are, that no matter where you poke, there are ideas to build. So now the hard part is to actually build it and think through it. The ideas are, it's easy to come up with ideas.
Definitely. This conversation is so interesting, and I'm sure there are so many more stories that you could share with us regarding previous hacks, but we'll make another one, I think, in a few months with even more stories. So to sum it up, like, how do you see the industry like in the future? Where are we going? Do you recommend newcomers to join from Web3 security, or just people that want to get started, maybe developers? Like final
thoughts. Some of the best security researchers in traditional or not traditional, they have no security backgrounds. They come from, they're musicians, they are engineers, they are nuclear physicists. This is an exciting field. You are the frontier. You are, no matter where you poke in, I mean, in the last couple hours that we talked, no matter where we explore, it feels like there's a vast industry, a vast field to research and build in. So join us. And then the biggest takeaway in all of this, join us not because it's a lot of fun, but also remember the impact you're going to have. You are going to do a lot of good in this world. You will affect millions of lives, and you will help folks transact freely, and you will increase trust, so they will be able to do this without an oppressive government or without being affected by wars and other disasters. And that's a good thing to fight for. So join the good fight.
Definitely join the good fight. Join Peter, join myself. Thank you so much for your time. It was one of the most interesting conversations, and I am sure that the listeners are going to enjoy it very much. And in touch.